You're watching Capitol Report on NTD. I'm Alina Weisskopf filling in for Steve Lance tonight. President Trump's reciprocal tariffs have now hit a setback. The president used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose the tariffs, saying the U.S. trade deficit is a national emergency. An appeals court in D.C. has now ruled the act doesn't authorize the tariffs. Trump has used the tariffs as leverage to secure more favorable trade conditions for the U.S. The ruling also applies to the tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China over fentanyl trafficking. Other tariffs, such as the ones on steel and aluminum, are not impacted. The president reacts to the court ruling, writing on Truth Social, all tariffs are still in effect, he says, and if these tariffs ever went away, it would be a total disaster for the country, Trump says, also referencing appeals to the Supreme Court. In the wake of Wednesday's tragedy, President Trump's cabinet is urging lawmakers to prioritize mental and spiritual health. And the president cancels former Vice President Kamala Harris's extended Secret Service protection. NTD's Mari Otsu has more from the White House.
It's such a heart-wrenching thing for all of us. And at the end of the day, the problem is not guns. The problem is the human heart.
In the wake of Wednesday's tragedy, Speaker Mike Johnson is now urging lawmakers to prioritize finding mental health solutions rather than blaming guns.
This is a mental health component to this that cannot be overlooked.
And Vice President J.D. Vance says that Americans need to address the root causes of this violence.
We really do have, I think, a mental health crisis in the United States of America. We take way more psychiatric medication than any other nation on earth.
RFK Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services, says that NIH is launching studies investigating how gender transition drugs affect health.
The psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence, many of them have black box warnings that warn of suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. We're not just in a health crisis, but we're in a spiritual crisis. And those things are connected. You have a whole generation of kids that feels alienated, dispossessed.
And while the White House has encouraged Americans to pray for the victims and their families, some public officials have criticized prayer. But Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is pushing back, saying that those criticizing prayer are, quote, expressing the same anti-God sentiment that motivated the shooter. Meanwhile, President Trump is canceling former Vice President Kamala Harris's extended Secret Service protection. Harris, like other former vice presidents, was legally entitled to 6 months of security after leaving office in January. Her protection was set to expire in July, but former President Joe Biden extended it for a year. President Trump's Thursday memo directs Secret Service to discontinue Harris's security procedures beyond those required by law, starting on September 1st. This comes as former VP Harris is expected to go on a 15-city book tour with kickoff on September 24th. And as Labor Day weekend is about to start, the White House is touting the lowest gas prices in the last 5 years and a record-breaking tourism surge.
As Americans make their Labor Day weekend travel plans, they will be able to enjoy 5-year low gas prices thanks to President Trump fully unleashing American energy dominance.
Produce more energy in America, you get lower prices, you get more jobs. That's our platform.
According to a GasBuddy analysis, Labor Day gas prices are expected to average $3.15 per gallon. Reporting from the White House, Mari Otsu, NTD News.
New evidence in the Minneapolis church shooting, which left 2 children dead and several others injured. The victims' families are now speaking out about their loss. NTD's Christina Corona has more.
New details have been released on Robin Westman, 23, whom authorities identified as the shooter at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis. Police say he was found dead at the back of the church with an apparent gunshot wound to the head. He was wearing black tactical gear and had at least 2 firearms nearby. Officers recovered 3 guns, a rifle, pistol, and shotgun, and found materials that may have been meant for a smoke bomb. The victims of Wednesday's shooting at Annunciation Catholic School have been identified as 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky. The families confirmed they were killed when the shooter opened fire through the church windows during morning mass. Fletcher's father spoke Thursday, remembering his son as a boy who loved family, friends, fishing, cooking, and sports.
Yesterday, a coward decided to take our 8-year-old son Fletcher away from us. Because of their actions, we will never be allowed to hold him, talk to him, play with him, and watch him grow into the wonderful young man he was on the path to becoming.
He also thanked the children and adults inside the church for their swift, heroic actions.
Please remember Fletcher for the person he was and not the act that ended his life. Give your kids an extra hug and kiss today. We love you, Fletcher. You'll always be with us.
Harper's parents described her as a joyful 10-year-old full of laughter and kindness whose spirit touched everyone around her. In a statement, the family says, "Our hearts are broken not only as parents, but also for Harper's sister, who adored her big sister and is grieving an unimaginable loss." They go on to say, "As a family, we are shattered and words cannot capture the depth of our pain." One 12-year-old student, Grayson Singh, recalled the terrifying moments.
At first, we were singing a song, and then I just saw glass shattering going down the line, and we were hiding underneath the pews.
Grayson urged his classmates to stay quiet while they hid under the pews.
Sometimes I hide under the pews and just sit there and stay, because I didn't want anybody to move. I just wanted people to be quiet. Didn't want to draw any attention to the back because I didn't want anything to happen.
Officials say 7 patients were taken to Children's Hospital. As of Thursday evening, 6 have been released and 1 child remains. Meanwhile, police say the shooter's mother, who worked at the school previously, has hired a criminal defense attorney, but investigators have not been able to reach her. Records show she lives in Florida. On Friday, the city's director of emergency management announced support for those affected.
If you were impacted, it's really important that you know this. If you were at the scene, if you worked in the church, if you were a neighbor that witnessed what happened, if you were a witness in the immediate area, you have the ability to access funds that will help you recover.
She said the funds are available on the state's website to help victims cover expenses like lost wages, medical bills, and child care. Christina Corona, NTD News.
The White House is canceling $4.9 billion in foreign aid, but this could cause a conflict with Congress. The Office of Management and Budget says that President Trump used a maneuver that could effectively bypass congressional approval. It's called a pocket rescission. The funds are withheld during the 45-day congressional review period. And if Congress doesn't act before the fiscal year ends, the funds expire. Pocket rescissions are uncommon, and the last one was attempted in 1983 by President Ronald Reagan. The maneuver sets up tension in Congress as it faces an October 1st deadline to avert a government shutdown. Democrats hint they could stall a funding bill if Republicans don't push back against Trump's pocket rescission. Joining us live now to discuss is Colorado Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Congresswoman, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be with you.
President Trump is using the pocket rescission, as we just heard, to run out the clock on this fiscal year without spending those funds. First of all, are you okay with President Trump circumventing Congress this way?
I think everything that President Trump is doing is proving that he arrived to the White House with a plan to put America first. I am absolutely in favor of these pocket rescissions and him taking action administratively to get our fiscal accounts in order. We've passed the One Big Beautiful Bill, and it was a major win for Coloradans, where I represent the 4th District, and it was a major win for our seniors who get who can take advantage of tax relief on Social Security, and even the working class families who avoid huge tax increase that would hit them without the One Big Beautiful Bill. And President Trump taking more actions and using tactics within the Office of Management and Budget is another resourceful way that he is getting our fiscal house in order. We just passed about $9 billion in rescissions out of the House and the Senate, and I would have loved to have seen that be an even larger amount. So whatever President Trump needs to do to claw back some of these dollars and really be a good steward of the American taxpayer, I'm in favor of.
But let's talk for a minute about how Democrats could respond to this. They could set up quite an obstacle here with you all facing that October 1st deadline to fund the government. The Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer has already said that this could undermine the normal funding process and risk a shutdown. Are you concerned about this?
Democrats are not going to agree with President Trump. I don't know if that's coming as a surprise to anyone, but he can say that the sky is blue and beautiful, and they would disagree and call it a different color and say how ugly it is. They are trying to be a hindrance to President Trump's agenda, but he has a mandate from the American people, and he is going to do everything that he can to deliver for America. We just suffered 4 years under Joe Biden, and of course the Democrats having the Senate, and at one point under Biden's administration having the House as well. And this was not good for America. We had wide open borders. There was an attack on our energy development. Our working class really was hit hard. It's impossible for folks to buy a home and live the American dream. And now President Trump is getting all of that back to where it should be. And of course, Democrats are going to try to get in his way. But I do believe that House Republicans and Republicans in the Senate will come together and ensure that not only our federal government is funded, but that it is funded properly, and President Trump and his entire administration can go full steam ahead.
Let's talk for a moment, Congresswoman, about crime. So there was an interesting investigation that was opened up this week by your colleagues on the House Oversight Committee. The chairman, James Comer, launched an investigation into allegations that D.C.'s police leadership manipulated crime data. What do you expect, Congresswoman, to come out of that committee investigation?
Yes. So even Mayor Bowser has remarked that things are looking better in the city. This is remarkable. She knows the crime. She hears about the crime on a regular basis. And anybody who has spent any time in D.C. over the past few years knows that the crime has gotten far worse, and criminals have felt like they could go after absolutely anyone, anywhere, anytime. Members of Congress and staffers have been attacked, and it's simply unacceptable. President Trump is getting the city cleaned up, safe, and in order. And many of us serving in Congress have believed for a while now that the crime data has been fixed to paint a roster, a rosier picture even than what is actually taking place. So I fully support this investigation, and I look forward to getting some actual answers here. It's not okay for them to cook the books and make things look safer than they are, and have DC appear to be a place that it's not. President Trump has done the right thing by taking control and federalizing the city, and I would love for Congress to make that permanent.
Now, when you all come back in the next week or so, Congresswoman, how is the House looking at ways to extend the president's efforts on crime with regards to the crackdown here in D.C. or other areas like Chicago, for example?
Yes, well, we can certainly remove home rule. So I serve on the Oversight Committee, and this is something that we have jurisdiction over, and we've certainly had hearings in the past regarding this. Democrats want to go the opposite direction and give D.C. statehood just because they want to add 2 more seats to the Senate that would likely be Democrat seats forever. But we can certainly pass legislation to fix that and have the House be in charge of the city as it's supposed to be, our nation's capital. And I think when everyone comes back to Washington, D.C., just next week, we will all see the difference, Democrats and Republicans alike. I'm already hearing from citizens who live in our nation's capital saying that things are much better. Of course, not everything is fixed, but President Trump is the first to take real action to eliminate crime, and Congress must do everything we can to codify not just this, but all of his executive orders that he has put forth this year.
So lastly, I want to ask you about the work that you've been doing and many other of your colleagues have been doing to tout the Big Beautiful Bill and bring that message to the voters. Tell us, how has the Big Beautiful Bill impacted people in your state of Colorado?
Yes, so the big beautiful bill, as I was talking about earlier, it is a major win for Coloradans, for our seniors, for our working class families, to avoid these huge tax increases. Is something that was really necessary. We have 1 million seniors in Colorado who are receiving tax relief, which is a huge help to the citizens who deserve and have earned benefits like Social Security and Medicare. We've protected 122,000 jobs in Colorado by passing the big beautiful bill. So even through our state's Democrat-controlled legislature is focused, they're focused on more fees and taxes on Colorado businesses. We're doing everything that we can at the federal level to protect these businesses and their employees. We also secured $50 billion in funding for rural hospitals and healthcare providers, which is a big win for my rural district. And it will certainly help make sure that we can get the care to citizens who need quality who need this quality care for assistance. This bill is a victory for Coloradans of every background, and I'm proud that we got the job done. We've implemented work requirements. We are doing what we can to remove non-citizens from many of our benefits, our taxpayer-funded benefits, and these work requirements, they aren't impacting young moms or moms with young children. This is for able-bodied adults who can certainly go and participate and be a part of our workforce.
Yeah, and we'll certainly see the impacts of this bill come out over the next several years ahead. Thank you, Congresswoman, for coming on today and sharing your insights. The Department of Health and Human Services has named a new acting CDC director, and Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will testify in the Senate next week, where he's expected to face pushback from Democrats over recent changes in the HHS. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
HHS Deputy Secretary Jim O'Neill has been named acting director for the CDC. The move comes 2 days after Dr. Susan Menares was removed from the position.
Her lawyer's statement made it abundantly clear themselves that she was not aligned with the president's mission to make America healthy again. And the secretary asked her to resign. She said she would, and then she said she wouldn't. So the president fired her, which he has every right to do.
Secretary Kennedy is working hard to restore the credibility and the integrity of CDC as a scientific organization committed to the scientific method.
O'Neill worked in various roles for the HHS during the George W. Bush administration before serving again with the 2025 Trump administration. Once chosen, the new CDC director will need to be confirmed by the Senate according to law. However, acting directors don't need to be confirmed. The HHS also stops about $122 million worth of grants deemed an inefficient use of funds, according to a report by the New York Post. The grants were funding research related to DEI and LGBT topics for 195 projects. The cuts are reported to have contributed to some of the conflicts with former CDC Director Susan Menares, according to the Post. And looking ahead, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is scheduled to testify in front of the Senate Finance Committee next week for a hearing on President Trump's health care agenda. Committee Chairman Senator Mike Crapo wrote Secretary Kennedy has placed addressing the underlying causes of chronic diseases at the forefront of this administration's health care agenda. I look forward to learning more about the Department of Health and Human Services Make America Healthy Again actions to date and plans moving forward. And committee ranking member Senator Ron Wyden said in a Thursday statement, after the mass firings and resignations of respected senior scientists and public servants at CDC over the last 24 hours, it is more imperative than ever that Kennedy answer to the public and their representatives about the chaos, confusion, and harm his actions are inflicting on American families. The hearing is scheduled for next Thursday, September 4th. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Today marks the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, one of the costliest natural disasters in U.S. history that claimed over 1,300 lives. Local organizations like the New Orleans Katrina Commemoration Foundation and the Hip Hop Caucus hosted events to mark the occasion. NTD's David Lamb reports.
It's a solemn milestone for communities impacted by Hurricane Katrina. 20 years have passed since the southern U.S. was hit by the deadly storm. New Orleans was one of the cities impacted by Katrina and had the most deaths. 80% of the city was flooded after the levee system failed. Friday's events, which included a commemorative march, honored those who lost their lives.
And we know that on this day, 20 years ago, August 29, 2025, our city and our lives were forever changed. But 20 years later, we stand and we sit here united. We're not united in faith, but united in real purpose. And it's been because of each and every one of us that are here, that are throughout the city of New Orleans, who made sure that every single one of those 20 years later, New Orleans is still here, New Orleans still stands, and New Orleans is truly positioned.
On Thursday, the Ella Project, a nonprofit that provides legal assistance to artists, hosted a discussion at the New Orleans Jazz Museum where panelists and locals came together. They expressed concerns about the preservation of local culture and the cost of rebuilt housing.
It's not going to last much longer if we continue going down that road. We have to change that. A lot of houses, since they come back and they fixed them, the rent is too high.
At the time right after Katrina, many folks were saying that, New Orleans isn't coming back, that the city's dead, there's no reason to rebuild. But New Orleanians knew that, no, we're going to rebuild. 20 years after Katrina, it's vibrant, it's happening. New Orleans is resilient, and we're going to keep moving forward.
Back in late August 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast. After first making landfall in Florida, Katrina intensified before hitting Louisiana on August 29th as a Category 3 hurricane. Katrina caused nearly 1,400 deaths and over $100 billion in damages.
You're everything I want, everything I need. This love's what I want it to be.
I mean, us as New Orleans, we struggle and we fight and we come up on top.
Folks told me the city has been through a lot, but people still love the area and call it their home. And we can see their resilience in the commemoration each year. In New Orleans, Louisiana, David Lamb, NTD News.